Draft weekend is fast approaching, and we go on the defensive on this edition of the Blitz. How about the Cowboys at defensive tackle? Could they draft a Texas Longhorn? And how are the Cowboys stacked in the secondary? It's all coming up next on the Blitz.
Pops out to the right, breaks a tackle. They blitz it. Prescott throws it down the right side for Lamb. Caught it! Back to throw, rush, sacked by Parsons.
Belt tie snap. Prescott with plenty of time. Lobs it in zone. Jake Ferguson.
Can you believe draft day is now, 2.5 weeks away? And I've got my Cowboys Star Draft Guide in hand right here. I'm going to read it throughout the next half hour. Welcome to the Blitz. Bill Jones along with Nicole Hutchison. And this is when it gets really good. Behind the scenes here at the Star in Frisco, we've had visits from college prospects this past week. It gets down to the nitty-gritty in the draft room back in the administrative offices here at the Star.
Things are going to get interesting in 2 weeks, and I'm excited to be a part of it, get to experience that for the first time, so it's going to be a lot of fun.
And we need some excitement around here. As you know, it has not been a lot going on as far as free agent signings. That has been by design.
Yes.
You know also that the Cowboys have lost a couple of offensive linemen in free agency, center Tyler Biadasz as well as the left tackle Tyron Smith. And this past week, Chuma Edoga is re-signed, one of the re-signings that the Cowboys have made. But this is all the strategy behind this offseason for the Cowboys.
For sure. And I know Cowboys fans are getting a little mixed emotions about it, but I'm excited to see what Chuma Edoga does, right? He's a selfless player. I know he had an ankle injury throughout the season last year, but he played through it despite I know with Tyron Smith, a lot of other injuries on that offensive line. So it's good to see him really prove himself in that possible starting role. But it kind of sends questions about Awesome Richards. I mean, what do you do about a guy like that? And is he developmental-wise, is he there?
There's so many young guys, young prospects on this Cowboys offensive line. Here's a veteran guy who was a third-round draft pick several years ago. Cowboys are going to be emphasizing offensive linemen, though, in this draft. You can just feel it. And when it comes to this past week, you had Dallas Day this week, where you've got the prospects from local high schools as well as colleges who made their annual visit here to the Star in Frisco. Plus, we had the 30 visits, too. Every NFL team can have 30 draft prospects that come and visit as well, and it's a great chance to get to know the top prospects a little bit better.
Yeah, I've got the chance to actually pass through and see some of them touring. I know they get to do a tour throughout the Star, but there's one guy in particular that I'm actually excited about to be here. I covered him at Kentucky, Trevin Wallace, he's kind of a day 2, day 3 kind of player, but he has so much athleticism. He's naturally gifted. He passes the eye test. He's a very explosive player. He's a guy that I'm actually really excited about possibly seeing here at the Cowboys. I don't know. We're just going to manifest that and see what happens.
Well, and he's one of those 30 visits, but every year I always say the Cowboys have such a great advantage being based right here in North Texas, where there's so many top prospects that come out every year, and they get an opportunity to bring them here and even work out many of those players on Dallas Day each year. So that's what's happened the past week here. Let's move ahead towards draft weekend, which starts on April 25th. And when we come back, how about the secondary for the Cowboys? Could this be a sneaky draft pick when the draft approaches here in a couple of weeks?
The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, is brought to you by AT&T, an official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, and by Blockchain.com. Make your crypto play today. This segment is brought to you by AT&T, an official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys.
Here's the way it stacks up in the Cowboys secondary this offseason. You got some veterans, you got some young, unproven players as well. I really like what you see at the cornerback position as far as the starters go, with Deron Bland and a healthy Trayvon Diggs, Jordan Lewis, the veteran, in the slot, and at safety with Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker. And we welcome you back here to the Blitz. Bill Jones with Nicole Hutchison. And let's take a look at this secondary. It's going to be very interesting with the new defensive coordinator in Mike Zimmer, who was the secondary coach for the Cowboys going all the way back to the 90s. Yeah. This is kind of his position right here. This is where he really made a name for himself, going back to the days of Deion Sanders and Darren Woodson and those guys in the secondary. Drafted Terrence Newman and Roy Williams as well. It is a sneaky, when you look at the secondary on this team and really knowing what Mike Zimmer is looking for in a defensive back, I can see the Cowboys going that direction at some point in this draft.
Yeah, I think they need to. I mean, because when you talk about the injuries, right, you talk about fully healthy Trayvon Diggs. We're expecting him to, we also have to give him a little grace, right, because this is his first year back from his injury. Then you have a guy like Jordan Lewis who, you know, he bounced back from his injury last year, but now this is his first fully healthy season as well. And then you have a guy like DaRon Bland, who of course did what he did last season. So I mean, it's a lot of excitement regarding this group, but you still have to make sure that you're not, you have that depth as far as just making sure the injuries are not a problem.
Yep, you got those ball hawks on the outside are something that we look forward to watching. And then I really like it at the safety position with Donovan Wilson and Malik Hooker, two guys that the Cowboys signed to longer-term contracts a year ago, and they're back. And then when you take Marquise Bell, who of course played linebacker here last year, and he goes into that safety mix presumably, especially and as a dime linebacker in passing situations, and Wanye Thomas and what he showed last year. I like what I have at the safety position.
I like what I see too. I think this will be Marquise Bell's, you know, a good opportunity for him to work directly with Al Harris. But Wanye Thomas, I mean, with the limited snaps, he was an 81.1 player grade, the fourth highest on defense, and an 85.9 coverage grade, the second best only to DaRon Bland last season. I'm excited to see what Wanye Thomas does this year.
All right, and so that gives you an idea of what the Cowboys have at secondary. We just needed a little refresher course there. It's, you know, the other thing about the draft is it's not just about this year, it's about the future as well, and the Cowboys can certainly stockpile at that position. When we come back, could there be some moving and shaking in the first round of the draft? What's Jerry up to? We'll talk about that with Kyle Yeomans when we come back in a moment.
This segment was brought to you by AT&T, an official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys. This segment is brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
Draft weekend is fast approaching, and you can be a part of it right here at the Star in Frisco. Of course, we'll have live draft coverage for you, and you can enjoy the draft here at the Star. It starts on Thursday night, April 25th, and runs through Saturday, the 27th. As we welcome you back here to the Blitz, Bill Jones, Nicole Hutchison, now joined by Kyle Yeomans, the father of three. Triplets are doing great, right?
They're doing great. Glad to be back. And I missed doing this show, so I had to get with Caden Gates, our producer. I said, get me a segment. Let me get back on the air.
All right. We got a segment for you, and this is what he loves. He likes getting that trade value chart with the draft picks and trying to figure out, okay, do the Cowboys trade back? Do they move up? What do they do? Take it away. What do you think?
So that's the thing, is this is a pick in a draft where the Cowboys want to acquire assets. They have 7 picks on the board right now. They have the first round, second round, third round, no pick in the fourth round, and then you make your next selection as a compensatory pick in the fifth, a comp pick in the sixth, 2 in the 7th. So a big gap there in the middle of this draft, and it's actually a 2024 draft class that bodes well for talent in the middle. These are a couple of ways that they can shift and maneuver to try and find value as it goes along. And of course, point values are all relative. Each team has their own chart, but this is the chart that I would go by to make some of these selections, and I've got 3 different scenarios for you guys.
I want to know how valuable that this can be for the Dallas Cowboys.
Well, first off, that's exactly what this first one's going to be. With the Buffalo Bills trading Stephon Diggs, getting him out of the building, they need a wide receiver. They're going to go up and try and grab somebody at pick 24. This is how valuable it could be for the Cowboys. Each of these scenarios, since Dallas is the team dropping backwards, are going to be overpays, and that's exactly what you see here from the point total. When you add all these together, it is 3.5 points more than the 740 that 24th pick is valued at. So you're dropping down just 4 spots, so you have to make up 80 points here with the additional picks from Buffalo. So that's where you get pick number 128 and pick number 133. 2 picks near each other is valuable in this draft class because then you have a couple guys that you're debating going into that 128th pick, which is in the 4th round, by the way. And then you turn around and you say, hey, we didn't get this one guy at pick number 128. We've got him at 133, and it helps you stockpile assets. Yeah. That's how it can be valuable for this Cowboys team.
Yeah, that could really do wonders for the Cowboys on Saturday. We'd pick up a couple of 4th-round draft picks right there. All right, what's next on your big board here?
So this one's a little bit different. This is stockpiling assets. Now we're switching spots. You're picking up value for dropping backwards in the draft. You only go 1 pick further down with the Detroit Lions. This is a team that needs offensive line help. Maybe there's a guard or a tackle that the Lions have been looking at. Dan Campbell says, get on the phone, let me call my former team. I want to go up to pick number 24. But the thing is, you're not making up a ton of points here. You have 740 and 640, so you're making up a difference of 100 points. That's where you have these switches come in, and it all adds up to plus 15 for Dallas. Again, they're dropping backwards, so that's why Detroit's moving up. Here you switch spots. You take the 2nd-round pick from Detroit. You still keep your pick at pick number 56, so you're picking 2 times in that 2nd round, but you don't get to pick in the 3rd or the 4th round. That's why you pick up 174, which is early parts of day 3. So you have an opportunity here to just mix and match a little bit. The point value still favors Dallas. This is a little bit more of a stretch than the first selection, but it's still possible if you want to try and pick up value and have a higher quality of draft pick early in the weekend.
Is there a position, hypothetically speaking, that you would be using this scenario for?
Yeah, I think you could possibly move back. Let's say Zach Frazier, West Virginia, is on the board, an interior offensive lineman. Graham Barton somehow slips to you, but you feel like you can get him a couple picks later. I think if you're picking up one of these offensive linemen that's not at the top of your list, that's where you're doing it at pick number 29, because you're still going to have a quality player. It's still a 1st-round player and possibly a 1st-round graded player for this front office. Now you get a chance to pick twice in the 2nd round, which is uber valuable for this team.
Now, the Cowboys have made trades with division rivals on draft day before. They did with the Eagles just a couple of years ago in the Micah Parsons deal. All right, what about with Washington right here? How about that?
This is the biggest stretch out of all of them, but it also is the biggest point value out of all of them for the Cowboys. Dan Quinn, I talked about former coaches here with the Cowboys. He gets on the phone. He says, you know what? We need offensive line help. We went and drafted a quarterback at pick number 2. We need to help out our offensive line.
Jerry says, we need offensive help too.
Exactly. But maybe that guy's not there for the Cowboys. They're looking at this list, and I mentioned offensive linemen. Maybe their top guys aren't available. So here's where you pull the plug completely. You're out of the 1st round, but you pick up a 2nd-round pick, and that's it. You flip picks with Washington, so you go back 12 spots. I'm not interested in going any further than this, by the way. This is about the edge. Top 5 picks of that 2nd round. You lose the 5th-year option on your selection, but you get to pick twice here, and you get a massive value with giving up that 24th overall pick, and it could possibly help you build your football team with some quality up front.
All right, we've seen him do a similar trade like that before, the Travis Frederick deal.
Exactly.
About a decade ago. All right, Kyle Yeomans, we appreciate it. And up next, Nick Harris joins us. We talk about some of those defensive line prospects, including a DeSoto Eagle when we come back.
This segment was brought to you by Reliant, the official energy provider of the Dallas Cowboys.
The 2024 Dallas Cowboys Star Magazine Draft Guide has in-depth scouting reports on the top college players with more than 400 prospects. Plus, there are breakdowns of the Cowboys' needs at each position, a look back 10 years ago to the team's dramatic draft of Zach Martin and DeMarcus Lawrence, the annual 1st-round mock draft, and more. Get your copy of the 2024 Draft Guide at your local pro shop or DallasCowboys.com/star. And we have our Star Magazine right here. I can't wait to dig into it. Bill Jones along with Nicole Hutchison, now joined by Nick Harris of DallasCowboys.com, and it's time to get deep into the trenches on defense. Let's look at defensive tackle prospects in this draft, and how about the guy out of Illinois, Jones Newton?
Yeah, it's a great place to start with defensive tackles, right? Dallas Cowboys are definitely going to try and get one probably in this draft cycle, you would have to think. Starting off with Jones Newton out of Illinois. He's originally from Florida, made the move all the way to the Big Ten to play in the Midwest at Illinois. He played next to a really talented defensive tackle in Keith Randolph Jr. while for the Fighting Illini as well. But he's more of a three-tech, talking about Newton. So he's playing that position that Osa Odighizuwa has been able to hone in on over the course of the last couple of years. But what he could bring to a Cowboys organization, that elite technique, you don't see that very often from a defensive tackle coming out of college. He uses his hands really well. He understands leverage. He utilizes his footwork to perfection, and he can rush the passer. You see him getting after Jalen Daniels of Kansas right there. He does a really good job of just being able to attack the backfield. I love what Newton brings to the football field.
It's only right to talk about a local guy, Byron Murphy out of Texas as well, Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year. When you talk about a guy like that who also had a very impressive combine, what do you like from him?
Yeah, shout out to DeSoto U. Byron Murphy coming out of the southern portion of Dallas and DeSoto High School, went to Texas, had 3 very productive years there, and you mentioned this last season, Big 12 Defensive Lineman of the Year. He's probably another 3-tech option that will probably line up to the right of the center if you're looking at it from the quarterback's perspective, but he can get after the passer as well. He can attack the backfield as well. It was funny, whenever he was coming out of high school, he was always drawing these Aaron Donald comparisons, and for me, I don't like to make those big comparisons, and so I was like, hey, let's take the pressure off the kid a little bit. But hey, now we're looking at him potentially going in the top 15 picks. He's well on his way to being able to fill out that comparison, but he's still got a long way to go.
One of the, I guess, bigger linemen that we had on the team was Jonathan Hankins. He's no longer here anymore. How much are you looking at that size? I mean, Byron Murphy is 300 pounds. Yeah. You really need a guy like that on the inside.
Yeah, you need a run stopper.
Yeah.
And I think you need a bona fide run stopper. While Byron Murphy is going to be productive in the NFL, in my opinion, I think you do need a guy that specializes in the run and is able to just sit in those running lanes, whether it's in the A or B gaps, and just be able to plow anything that comes through it.
I'm thinking that Nick is projecting him to the Rams to be their next Aaron Donald. But to your point, how about Tandre Sweat, who is only about 64 pounds heavier than Byron Murphy, 3 inches taller?
Yeah, if you need a bigger body, there's no bigger one than Tandre Sweat, 366 pounds, as you mentioned. Yeah, this past season was huge for him at Texas. He was going into the year around a 330 range, but took that offseason with a different approach. He was able to bulk up his body, really focused on his technique. Got to shout out Texas defensive line coach Bo Davis, who's now at LSU. But what he did with these 2 guys in the interior at Texas last season, it was phenomenal. And it's got both of these guys projected to go at the very latest in the second round of the draft. Tandre Sweat, he's going to be that big body that just stands in the way of running lanes. He's going to be able to do that at the NFL level.
We've talked about the bigger name guys. What about some of the guys that may be, picks on day 2 or day 3, like a Northern Iowa defensive tackle, Christian Boyd?
Yeah, I really like Christian Boyd. We got the first opportunity to take a look at him at the East-West Shrine Bowl here at the Star a couple of months ago. It was one of the first collegiate all-star games. I didn't really know a whole lot about him going into that week, but it was all anybody could talk about coming out of the week. He'll line up at that 1-tech position, 6'2", 330 pounds. So stout-wise, he can match up with a lot of NFL centers and be able to attack them. He understands leverage. Talking about Jones Newton, man, this is a guy who, coming off of that 1-tech over at nose tackle, he can really get after the passer. He can get after the running lanes. He's a guy that I think that could be sitting there on day 3. If the Cowboys haven't gotten their guy in the interior defensive line, this is a guy that I think they can get good value out of.
And it's something to keep an eye on, because the Cowboys definitely have a need, or more than one need, on that defensive line. Nick Harris, we appreciate it. And up next here on the Blitz, some key dates to look forward to this offseason.
The Dallas Cowboys Blitz, presented by Blockchain.com, was brought to you by AT&T, an official sponsor of the Dallas Cowboys, and by Blockchain.com. Make your crypto play today.
Final couple of minutes here of the Blitz, and a look ahead, the offseason schedule for the Cowboys players. Rookie camp May 10th and 11th. OTAs shortened this year for the Cowboys, May 22nd, May 30th. Those 2 weeks, they'll have the OTA workouts and a mini camp taking place June 4th through the 6th. And before you know it, we'll be headed to Oxnard, California for training camp. By the way, the schedule release will come the first couple of weeks of May as well. How about this? With the trade this past week, Stephon Diggs, now a member of the Houston Texans. Houston plays at Dallas this year. We're going to have Stephon versus Trayvon at AT&T Stadium.
It's going to be a lot of fun. When I saw the news come out, I was like, oh my goodness, this is going to be fun, but also like, wow, Houston's got a good team over there. I'm excited for them.
That's right. Cowboys are putting together.
Yes, oh, they are.
All right, for Nicole Hutchison, I'm Bill Jones. We'll see you again next week here on The Blitz.